But Frederica's eyes were a startlingly vivid blue, very large and framed with thick, sooty lashes, which gave an appealing air of femininity to a face that was otherwise too strong for what was hailed as beauty in this first part of the 19th century. The cult of the child bride or little doll was all the rage. It was fashionable for a woman to be stupid, to lisp, and to cultivate pretty babyish ways. The fashion at the court of Marie Antoinette for complete idleness, of never even opening a door for oneself, had finally seeped over and into English society despite the upheaval of the French Revolution and the Great Colonial War. Not only that, it became the fashion for a woman not to think deeply about anything. Useless bodies and useless minds led to fashionable posturing and subsequently to going into a decline. When warm weather and sunny skies finally returned to London, Frederica decided it was time to see about arranging a little more freedom. She considered Felicity to be little help as an ally. Felicity had become quiet and pale and silent since Fanny's departure. There had been a strong rivalry among the girls that still remained to a certain extent. Frederica privately envied Felicity's more gentle, feminine looks, but would not admit this to herself and damned the girl as being totally useless. Frederica's plan was therefore to manipulate Mrs. Waverley into taking them out somewhere more exciting than round and round Hanover Square on their carefully guarded walks. As soon as she had achieved that, she meant to set about finding out the identity of her parents. Fanny had tried and failed, but Frederica considered herself to be made of sterner stuff. The little she knew was that the three of them had been taken from a foundling hospital in Greenwich, and from there to an orphanage. The house in Hanover Square was well appointed and efficiently run. There were no men servants, only women. Mrs. Waverley did not even keep a carriage, since to do so would mean having a male stable staff, and so rented one from the livery stables when she needed to go out driving. Frederica went along to her boudoir one morning to start loosening the prison bars a little. Mrs. Waverley was sitting at a small escritoire in the corner of her boudoir writing letters. She was a heavy-set woman with one of those proud, fleshy faces you see on old cameos. She turned round as Frederica entered the room. "Tell Felicity to be in the library in half an hour," said Mrs. Waverley. "That Greek translation of hers was not all it should be. And you yourself, Frederica, are not paying proper attention to your lessons these days." "We have a very limited education," said Frederica. "My dear child, you have the best. Have I not taught you the masculine sciences as well as a knowledge of languages?" By masculine sciences, Mrs. Waverley did not mean fencing or boxing, but physics and mathematics. "I thought the purpose of our education was to prove that women have minds the equal of men," said Frederica. "But we are not in the least equal to men. In fact, we are in our way less than any of the pretty dolls who have come to London to look for a husband." Mrs. Waverley's face flushed with anger. "How so?" "Balls and parties may be frivolous pursuits," said Frederica, "but plays and operas are not. You had begun to enlarge our experience, but since Fanny fled, you have made us recluses again. You have no faith in our strength of mind. We are kept at home like useless toys. It makes one think that marriage might offer more freedom." "You ungrateful girl," said Mrs. Waverley. "I am not ungrateful," retorted Frederica. "Only think what people must be saying. You think they are walking past the house and saying, 'That is where Mrs. Waverley lives, that great champion of rights of women.' But they are probably saying, 'That's where that odd recluse lives, you know, the one nobody sees.'" "Go to your room," raged Mrs. Waverley. "You are unkind and unfeeling and truthful," pointed out Frederica. "Cannot we have a reasonable debate on the subject, or must your very female emotions always get in the way? Of what are you frightened? That I shall run off with some man? I am not like poor Fanny, who is probably discovering what misery marriage is." "Go away," said Mrs. Waverley quietly. "I shall expect you both shortly to attend your lessons." Frederica left.